and the increasing number of tenants who hail from elsewhere. Indeed, this is something of a microcosm of the world at large and the paradoxical realities of globalization. Not only St. Maarten is worried about the phenomenon, many places are worried about the impact of what is the result of the diversity which follows on the encounters of different cultures in confined geographical spaces. As a Caribbean country, St. Maarten is by definition a culturally diverse entity, has always been, and likely to remain so. It has in any case long shared an island with citizens of another imperial power, which has its overseas territories as departments of the metropole. The Netherlands version is both similar and different, but the practice of conjoint habitation of the land has developed habits of living together rather than simply side by side, aspects of which have found institutional manifestations which are even now, I gather, in jeopardy. But that is part of the paradox of globalization. For two opposite forces are at work. On the one hand, centripetal ones that suggest cultural homogenization backed by trading protocols, and on the other, centrifugal forces that retreat from the threat of one-dimensional dullness and insist on the deepening and heightening of the specificities of local cultural realities away from entrapment at a predetermined center. For it is the sharing of one world on terms admittedly peculiar to each stakeholder, but collectively engaged, that provides the texture and multidimensionality which is the reality of human existence in the planet which we all inhabit. It is relevant to draw to the attention of the symposium then a recent development in UNESCO, and as you heard, UNESCO representative for the region in culture is here. Reports are that UNESCO approved at its last general conference a pact meant to protect cultural diversity after a bitter debate that left the United States almost isolated in opposition. The convention received the approval of 149 of the 154 UNESCO member states, which voted with 4 abstentions and 2 voting against. The 2 voting against were the United States and Israel. The abstention by Australia has given me pause, for I may well have been mistaken in believing that Australia had gotten over having to abandon its former white Australia policy, which from the 1970s seemingly gave way to the realization that Aborigines and Asians do inhabit that island continent from Darwin to Melbourne. Israel's vote against the Convention on Cultural Diversity is, however, more understandable. Israel is a Jewish state, a virtually theocratic enterprise. Despite a Palestinian presence in its borders, Israel is meant to remain a Jewish state, with Judaism as the established religion, and the Jews as God's chosen people. Diversity is opposite to this ideal, even if an Islam minority is tolerated within Israel's borders. The United States, as a part of the heterogeneous Americas, and the United States is only one part of the Americas, is a different kettle of fish. It is arguably the most diverse country in the world, this side of the Atlantic, despite the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant WASP image it has tightly embraced since its independence. The Negroes, now African Americans, have long presented difficulties for that American WASP identity. But latter-day immigration of Hispanics has added to the problem. The Irish and Eastern Europeans were white enough to integrate or be integrated into the majority superordinary group. And even the olive-skinned Italians qualified for such integration. But Negroes, Hispanics, Middle Easterners, and Asians, Indians and Pakistanis, Koreans, Vietnamese, Chinese, and Japanese have remained among the minorities in the ethnic mix. According to a media report, the UNESCO Convention on Cultural Diversity, championed by the culturally diverse European Union and Canada, aims to preserve cultural diversity by promoting ethnic traditions and minority languages, and to protect local cultures from the negative effects of globalization. However, the news reports further inform us that the United States fears that that convention could be used to erect trade barriers against cultural exports such as movies. Clearly, Hollywood is here endangered, and pop music in the field of entertainment worldwide. The United States' 28 amendments to the draft were all rejected by the countries voting in support. One can see why this would be regarded as an insulting blow to the world's sole superpower. If St. Martin were an independent member state of UNESCO, how would it have voted? I cannot imagine it's abstaining or voting against. And it is safe to assume that metropolitan Netherlands, voting with the European Union, rejected the United States amendments. Holland should by now be aware of the richness of the Netherlands' cultural heritage, enhanced by ex-colonists from Indonesia, Suriname, and the Netherlands Antilles, which are themselves deeply textured entities floating in the Caribbean. Admittedly, it has no fear of being swamped by the foreigners in their land, though many of their young and are hooked on Zouk and on other things which shall be nameless. The Caribbean Carnival is also a mainstay in Rotterdam, without doing violence to Dutch tulips, Dutch cheese, the Joie de Vivre, or that Eurocentric Christian Protestantism, which is a core value of Holland. But Holland, while confident in its Dutch language, is quite willing to have its citizens speak English, which puts them in touch with hundreds of millions all over the globe, where English has attained the status as the language of commerce, of science and technology, and even of diplomacy. France, although she voted for cultural diversity, prefers to maintain the specificity of the French language, which once enjoyed universal dominance, especially in the field of diplomacy, as Latin once did. So some time ago, France limited transmission of whatever would result in a non-Francophone cultural invasion. Barbados had itself indicated that some 60% of material transmitted